This podcast contains discussions of violence and other subject matter that may be triggering or disturbing to some audiences. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
I told him the message. I said, Bruno, they're going to call you down to New York next week. And he was like, how do you know? That's when he told me, you got your butt. Like that,
Yeah.
And so, where were you? How did you go down there? Why didn't I get notified? So they were calling him to go down there. And what they were going to tell him was, we're taking you down. They were going to use the excuse, you drinking too much, and whatever other excuse that they were going to use with him. It's just, we're not comfortable with you, and we're going to put Felix up in that position. And that's what they were going to do. And Felix was he's a dummy. He doesn't know how to make any money. And he's just going to be a lightning rod to protect me.
Right.
So everybody that knows that, right?
Right.
And so and that's what the Genovese family is good at. They insulate their bosses and everything.
Yeah.
And then so Felix is going to have to report secretly to me, but no one's going to know that.
Makes sense.
So Bruno was going to get called down to New York and get told that. Now, in the meantime, as all this shit's going on, and don't forget, there's a lot of shit that happened. We were involved in another murder. We're involved in shootings. I'm involved in another murder conspiracies. All this is going on when...
Meaning brother-in-law?
Yep, my brother-in-law who killed him. Yep.
Got it, yeah.
And so all this stuff and murder conspiracies, my best friend I grew up with, they told us to kill him prior to Bruno. And then, so what changed? Luis Santos, they told us to kill him. And this was, like I said, there's no friends in that life. We're friends with him, and now we're getting an order.
And then he has the orders to kill him.
So all this is taking place, and I'm in a war with this other faction that was, informants to, So I'm trying to kill them, and so all of a sudden, in 2000, there was an arrest with the bosses, Babbitt Chiavelli, Anthony Arillotta, was like 10.
Yeah.
Emilio Fusco.
Yeah.
So they were getting sentenced now in 2003. And when they went to get sentenced, the kid Emilio Fusco is going to get an extra year onto a sentence because he's a made guy. He says, I'm not a made guy. He denied it. And the government produces a 302, which is a paperwork saying that.
We read about that. Yeah.
Did you read it?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, we read about it. Yep.
So it's a 302 saying that Emilio's a made guy. And how do they know? Al Bruno was talking to an agent named Cliff Hedges, and he was telling him
you don't do that, right? That's a no-no.
Right. So, I mean, whether they met by, was he an informant with a number? I don't believe so. I don't think so. But regardless of that, was he an informant with a number? The FBI comes up to you and says, hey, do you know who robbed the bank over there? Yeah, it was Joey and Tommy. Is that the same thing? You're not an informant, but you told the FBI who robbed the bank.
Right.
So that's what Bruno did. He, if you ask any street guy that knows anything about the streets, what Bruno did was, an informant move. So, and what he was trying to do, and just on his defense, he was trying to cultivate the FBI, sort of like what Bulger had in with Boston, and sort of like what he had, what the Western Mass faction had with Matty Ryan, who was the state U.S. attorney.
That's right. That's right.
So he was trying to cultivate him. I get that, but at the same time, you just got a made guy, your brother, an extra year, and he told him who the other members were, and he got into other details and things like that. Right. All right. So anybody on the streets knows that paper is going to get him killed back then. Right. Emilio takes the paper. They get into an argument down at the Fiorentina coffee shop, a yelling match. Right. And then Bruno's got this lawyer, Anthony Cardinale, who is the worst attorney. He's like the big powerhouse attorney out of Boston, the absolute worst. Everyone he gets life or 40 years in prison. And this guy's such an ego weirdo. Like, anyways, he was representing Emilio on the case.
Okay.
So he knows the paper exists. And he's one of those guys, if you cooperate, Frank Salemi cooperated. I took all of his stuff and moved it out. But all of a sudden now he knows that paperwork exists, and he protected Bruno. So they all pick and choose, which guy cooperated, did this and did that, and blah, blah, blah. So that paper comes out. Now Emilio's mad. He shows it to me, shows it to Felix, right? Now we're both made guys, and Felix takes it with Milio, goes to the payphone, calls up that informant John Bologna and tells him, said, hey, Bruno called spion, like in Italian means stool pigeon, right? And I got some paperwork on it. And they already was the acting boss. And there's other two bosses too, Larry Dentico and Mario Gigante. They told me to bring the paper down. So Felix goes down and brings the paper. Okay. Then Felix comes back. Then they ask Felix to come down again. And then Felix comes back. I said, what happened? They told Felix to kill Bruno. That was the order. So the three bosses seen the paper, and they said,
was it.
Now,
That was enough.
Now, who did they tell to kill Bruno? Felix, right? Not me.
Right. Because Felix is the
right. So they tell Felix. Now, who do I take orders from? New York.
Yeah, right.
They made me Artie.
Right.
I don't take orders from Felix. So who did they tell to kill? If they want, I take orders from New York. If they wanted me to kill him, they would have told me.
Already would have told you
directly, right? And this way you eliminate, because when you're going to kill somebody, the less people that know, the better. You're not going to tell everybody, because it's more people involved in the conspiracy that can flip and get you 100 years in prison, life in prison. So Felix got told that, but Felix is incapable of killing him. He doesn't have a crew that is capable of killing. I got the biggest crew, the most violent crew, and all the killers.
100%.
He doesn't have any. So now he gets told, he tells me, oh, they want us to kill Bruno. I said, no. You got told. I don't take orders from you. You got told to kill Bruno. I'm trying to kill this Manzi piece of shit family. That's what I'm doing. I don't care about Bruno. I don't care. You got told that. I wasn't told. I take orders from him. You don't tell me what to do. I'm not. See you later, right?
That's it.
So then a couple of weeks go by. We kill my brother-in-law. We're shooting. I'm trying to kill this other kid, shooting him at downtown intersection, having guys waiting for him at his restaurant to kill him. And then I get called down to New York. Now, I'm not supposed to know anything, because if Felix was capable of killing Bruno, Felix would have came back, killed Bruno. I wouldn't know nothing, right?
Chef.
And I would have woke up that day and said, oh my God, Bruno got killed, thinking like, who did it?
Right.
Right? And then I wouldn't have got known anything, right? I would have been like one of everyone else, not involved in the conspiracy. But because Felix couldn't do it, they call me down. I got to act like I don't know what's going on, because you're talking about murder here. You're talking about murder. Like, you don't talk about murder. And then Artie, just so you know, you don't ever talk outside the made guys or the people that are going to commit the murder. He's talking to an informant, John Bologna. John Bologna is an informant. He's not a made guy. Two families told us that he was an informant. The Gambinos and the Patriarchas said that the guy with the beard, John Bologna, is an informant. I asked permission to kill him. Artie protected him. So not only. So afterwards, I'll tell you why what happened. But I'm thinking like Artie knows what he's doing, because that's what they do. Like Carmen Persico, they said he was an informant. I believe Carmen Persico knew what Greg Scarpa was doing for 30 years as an informant.
Yeah,
I believe Persico knew about it, because it came right in the front page and Persico was an informant. Why would they put that on the front page? They had documents that because I think he was getting the okay. Scarpa was getting the okay to do it. So I'm thinking the same thing, like Whitey Bulger. You got guys that are bosses that, are flipping. And,
are you thinking at this point maybe Artie's?
When I got arrested later, I did. When I got arrested, yes, 100%, I thought Artie flipped. But so at this time, Felix is incapable of killing him. I get called on there. He says, you know what's going on? I said, no, we got to clip Bruno. He tells me to get involved, and he tells me not to get my hands dirty, but, help plan it and help get it done, because he knew I had a crew that could get it done, right? And so that's what I did. We came back, and it took a couple weeks, and Bruno ended up getting killed.
So Bruno gets killed. Is that in Springfield? Is that a big shakeup? Is this like a big thing? Is this like, I feel like Al Bruno, I just feel like the name, maybe just because of the time that he was there, but
this was national news. Bruno was known nationally. He was always in papers, very flamboyant gangster. He was, like a larger than life type.
Was he
criminal.
flashy? Was he
very flashy?
Was he like John? Was he like John Gotti? Like very flashy in the sense of
he was just like Gotti, but only not as brash as him.
I got you.
Very more of a classier version. More of a something like that. Gotti was like, just his walk and his look, and Bruno was more like flashy and like that, but more. You knew his presence was there, but more quieter.
Smarter.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, it was national news. It was a big thing. It was like the biggest murder to happen in, outside of New York,
right,
in mob circles.
right,
Like that was like, a huge. That was like a Paul Castellano murder, but only in our area.
huge.
Yeah,
But it just boggles my mind, and maybe it's just the hierarchy of everything of the fact that you guys go to New York or you take orders only from New York when it comes to killings or
Yeah,
things like
right.
that. But as we talk about the story more, it's like how much bigger can this get? Where it's like, okay, New York wasn't the only heavy hitter. Like if you look at the Springfield, like if you look at what's going on here, like New York just always gets the glamour. It's always John Gotti. It's always that pro. It's always the bigger, larger than life. But what you guys were doing here was huge.
Oh yeah,
Mafia wise, big shit.
right. And not only that, the money though. Listen, I'll put our money up that we were making here right up with what they were making in New York. Like, because you don't understand, we didn't have to split it with anybody. It was just one family. So we have control over the same rackets that they have control. Yes, it's a very smaller area, but we don't have to share it. And we got, they got, say, 10,000 guys fighting over it, where we got 1,000 guys.
Right.
So,
right.
and it's a large area. Come on, you're talking Mass, Western Mass, Central Mass, and Connecticut.
It's a big deal. Huge.
Yeah. So we got all the access to the concrete industry, the cement industry, the garbage, all the sports gambling, the numbers business, the loan sharking business, the slot machines, the casino business. We got access to, and then the legitimate businesses, the strip club businesses were through the roof. The money that they made. We had 5 alone in Springfield.
Name them for me, just out of curiosity.
The Mardi Gras,
of course.
Okay.
Yeah, you've never been there, but I have.
Center Stage 418.
Sure.
The Showroom, which was Lace, Teddy B's,
yeah,
the Fifth Alarm, the one, I think it's called the Show Bar now. Yeah, that's the only one left. And yeah, and they were all like, and then you got going into Connecticut, the Mardi Gras 2.
Yeah,
then
that's right.
You got the Electric Blue.
Oh yeah, it's
Then you got and these were all going to be ours. So when I don't get arrested in 03, like then you got Minx now, but it was the Gold Club. That was ours. Right. That was the Weasel, Johnny Bazille, and Richie Finelli's the one that Johnny Bazille ratted on. Just so everyone knows.
Okay.
And that's in the newspaper. It came straight out in the newspaper. And so they had the Gold Club. Now I'm taking over in 03. I'm going to get all the strip clubs. That's what I want. I don't want nothing to do with the streets. I want all the strip clubs.
What about nightclubs?
Yeah, nightclubs we have.
You like that? You like that shit?
Yeah. But the strip clubs was my thing because, there was so many avenues of money streaming coming in. That was just insane. They were making $100,000 a week at the Mardi Gras 1 before they even sold booze or alcohol food, So I wanted the strip clubs, and I was going to get both Gold Clubs because it was Uncle Al's, then it was Gold Club, then it became Ming's. Then this guy ended up getting into it. But if I don't get arrested in 03 and all this shit doesn't happen, we were already involved with them in those clubs. So we grabbed them. You had the one in Vernon, Cahoots, then you're going down through the
still getting over Electric Club. Yeah.
Well, someone just bought that now.
Yeah.
It's gonna be open.
It's called the Den.
Is that what it is now?
Yeah. All kinds of it.
Yeah. And then you keep going down Connecticut, you keep going into Bridgeport. There's the ones there now. This guy from Minx just bought 2 more in New Haven. You got Stamford, and you got Mystique, and so all the way down to going to Newington. There's some I forget the name of it, but there's all throughout Connecticut. Those were all controlled by us.
Right. So and all of the nightclubs. So
not all the nightclubs, but a lot of the nightclubs we're doing business in. So if we don't own them, maybe we got silent partners in them, or we're doing business with the guy somehow, some way.
I got you. Yeah. Springfield. So strip clubs, nightclubs, Springfield, Connecticut. That's all you guys.
Yeah. I mean, and for the majority of it, and not to mention, the restaurant industry, silent partners in them. I was involved with like a dozen of them throughout my, restaurants. And so, and then when you go out and get treated, they don't ever charge you. You go to the restaurant, you don't ever get a check half the time, unless you're going to like a Morton Steakhouse. And even when you go to them places, like I had my pictures on the wall. We would get after dinner drinks free. I was playing golf with the owner and managers of the Mortons, the actual owner. And so like they treated us like kings there. And, we just kept, branching out, and it was just a very lucrative. That's why I always say we had an empire within the empire,
You did.
because you have to answer to nobody when it came to money. Only thing with they killing, making new guys, or if there was a beef amongst other families, and New York had to get involved.
I mean, I almost feel like in a lot of ways, New York was kind of foolish for overlooking you guys, or being like, dude, that Genovese faction out in Springfield, Connecticut's making some shitload of money, and why no money's flowing back to us? Like, it's like they slept on you guys, or is it not?
It's not that they slept. It's like we had our territory, and like I said, they let in and squeeze their captains and soldiers, and so this was our area. They had a big area up there, and it was just no money went down there. It was just and I believe it's because of the power and the money that was coming in that they had.
Right.
So
they had so much.
Now don't forget, we didn't. It's not that we didn't work out deals too. Now, like a business deal together. Like say a real estate deal, or we got a trash company in Connecticut that we're going to be doing business with, and so you have maybe a part of the Genovese in New York, with something like that. That's different when you're organizing deals and businesses like that. That's a different part of it. But no money just went down and said you got to kick off like that.
We're on the market, so
yeah.
Okay, so you're the boss. Bruno's gone. Well, there's Felix. Felix is there,
right? But he does
Felix. So when does he kind of when does that end with Felix? Like,
yeah.
When is it like, okay, Anthony's the guy now? Like
the whole time, it was just Felix was just, and he knew it. Like he didn't have no rackets on the street that he didn't make no money on the streets. Yeah. Everything that he had was off of something that I was already doing. And so for instance, we were going to shake down not shake down. We were getting involved in the vending business.
Yes.
So we kicked Baba out. Okay. We took over that business. So we took over the rackets for the vending business, the Joker poker machines, plus legitimate vending business. We ended up buying it for like $700,000-800,000.
And that rendered a good result, good return.
So there was this other company that had like 50 machines out. We're making a lot of money. So I went to them and I said, listen, we're getting involved in the business. If you want to give us 4 or 5 locations, we can go after your other locations. And what I mean after them is like, this place right here got 3 machines.
Yeah.
We know the owner. If I come in here and I say, hey, can I put my machines and take theirs out? He goes, sure, Anthony, no problem. I know you better than them. But say I didn't know the owner. Can I put my machines in there? Well, I'm already doing business with those guys. All right, well, what's the take with that? 50-50? I go, I'll give you 60. 40. You take 60, I'll take 40. I'll give you 70-30. I'll give you 80-20.
Just want to get in there.
Get in there. Right. So I tell them the business and that's what I was getting involved in it. So Felix comes up and Felix goes, hey, I'm going to go shake down those guys because that's his thing. He doesn't know how to, hustle and make money. So he goes,
shake him down.
I'm going to go shake him down. I said, go do what you want to do. I go, I'm going in the business. I said, so you could do what you want. So that was our that was our relationship.
I got you.
Felix, do what you want. I don't care what you do, but you're not going to get involved in anything I do or stop me from doing anything. Right. Or, if I'm involved now, and once I say I did get involved, then I would stop you from doing that because now they're involved with me.
Right.
But they weren't yet.
Right.
So that's why I didn't care what he did.
Right. And it must have been like everybody around there kind of knew, like, even though Felix is there, like, you're the guy. And that doesn't need to be said, right? Like,
the guys that needed to know.
They knew.
The one problem was, like, when Bruno did get killed and I had to come out and assert my power to take street stuff, guys didn't know. Like, Baba didn't know I was a made guy. So I'm coming to Baba. Yeah. So I'm coming to Baba and saying, yeah, because, see, Baba got chased. Baba got shelved. Shelved means, like, nothing. You're nothing no more. And because he pled guilty to being a made guy in the Genovese family, because Baba was the boss when they got arrested. So in 2000, when he pled guilty, he said, yes, I'm a made guy. So it got word back to New York. They know he did it. So they said, take everything from him. So that's what I did. I took everything from Baba.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to do this, his workers are working for him. And here I am coming in and saying, no, the numbers business is mine.
Yeah.
What do you mean? you're talking a notorious guy like that.
Oh, shit.
Strepsell's, and here I am. They don't even know I'm a made guy, and I'm coming in. Oh yeah, this is my stuff now. So it had to get a little nasty.
I'm
like,
sure.
You know, like I had to tell them, and you know, like it got violent. Where because like I'm a made guy. I kill people. I shot people. I shouldn't have to. You know, if I tell you something, you know, I already
you just fucking do it. I earn my stripes. Like,
right, but they don't know I did that. They don't know I killed this. They don't know I killed that. You know?
I feel like you can be made.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, watch out, bitch.
Yeah, I feel like you can. Yeah.
It's just it's just such a wild story.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even know where to go from here. I can sit with you. So we talked about Connecticut. Let's talk about Connecticut a little bit. Now you're in there. What is the Connecticut Mafia like? A lot of people don't realize. A lot of people just, I feel like, say, when you talk about Mafia, I always knew, you know, John Gotti. I had the Thanks John hat my dad got me. John Gotti was it. That's I never heard nothing. I didn't hear shit about Connecticut. Would never have known. So tell us a little bit about it. I mean, it's the Connecticut Mafia. What is it like?
Connecticut had a notorious presence there. Well, you know, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Even when I was a young kid, throughout the 80s, 90s, you know, Hartford was heavily organized crime. New Haven, big presence. You know, Stamford, Bridgeport, all the way up and down. You had multiple families operating out of Connecticut. You had Genovese, Colombo, Gambino, Patriarcha. So you had some notorious guys. Whitey Tropiano was in Murder Inc., you know, involved with them.
Yeah.
My uncle was best friend. My grandmother's brother, my uncle Danny.
Yeah.
He was best friends with Whitey. They wanted my uncle to set up Whitey to get killed. That order came from Raymond Patriarcha Sr. And so, you know, when you got an order like that, you had to do it. And if you didn't do it, you're dead.
And who got that order?
My uncle Danny got an order to set him up, and he didn't do it. He ended up taking his own life. So my uncle Danny killed himself on Christmas Day rather than kill Whitey Tropiano. And then Whitey Tropiano ended up getting killed anyways in the near future. They killed him in the streets of New York City. So they killed him anyways. You had Billy Grasso, notorious legend gangster, ruthless as they come. I mean, so you put these guys right up with New York wise guys, one and the same. If you took New York, brought them there, you took them, brought them to New York, it'd be one and the same. You know, Billy Grasso, notorious. You had, you know, like in the Hartford area, you had a lot of patriarchas. You also had a lot of guys that were not good. Tony Volpe.
Tony Volpe, big name in that the whole
Frank Samiti.
Yeah.
You know, Frank Samiti was a shooter. You know, you had
Are you close to Tony Volpe?
Yeah, I used to hang out with. So it's funny when I got shelved by Bruno from getting caught with the marijuana in 96 to 98.
Yeah.
I ended up hanging out in Hartford a lot, you know, outside and, you know, outskirts of everywhere. And I became friends with more made guys and associates that were in the mob than I did when I was in the mob. And so me and Tony got really close.
Yeah.
And then so Bruno ends up bringing me back around in 1998. He said, "You all done selling drugs?" I said, "Yeah." He called them narcotics, you know, it's marijuana. So I said, "Yeah." And but anyways, in the meantime, I'm selling drugs with all the Connecticut guys. Rooster.
Oh yeah.
Onofrio.
Oh yeah.
Anthony. They called him Chicky.
Yeah.
Anthony, I forget his last name, but good guy. Sold them all the drugs.
Yeah.
All the marijuana, you know, and you made lots of money together. So when we meet in the future, Bruno has me go down to see, hey, you know Tony Volpe? I said, yeah. I go down and see him. Can you go down and tell him I come back like the next morning? He goes, did you go down and see the guy like I told you? I go, yeah. I go. He was shocked like I did. He goes, you met with Tony Volpe and he came back. I was already friends with Tony Volpe.
And he couldn't believe that.
Exactly. But then we go out to dinner another time and we go and meet Rooster with his guys in New Haven.
Yeah.
And me and Rooster shake hands like we meeting for the first time. Meanwhile, I sold them millions of dollars. Him and the other guy, Anthony, worth of marijuana.
But you can't. Because then the first thing they're going to do is like
how do you know each other?
Right.
How do you know each other?
Yeah. That's such a slippery slope, man. Figuring out, like, can you imagine being in a room and I got to pretend I don't know you?
I was in Rayos in New York City.
Yeah.
And a Lucchese guy comes up to me that I sold, made, with the Lucchese's. It comes up and taps me on my shoulder. I'm with all the bosses because our table was a Genovese. I had the bosses of Providence, Boston, and New York there. And this guy taps me on the shoulder, goes, Anthony. His name was Ronnie. I said, hey, I went like this from real quick, and I turned because that's all I need is for Bruno. Bruno was with me, him to say, who's that? And how do you know a guy in New York City, that's a main guy with the Lee Casey fan? I'm gonna be like,
Are you nervous as shit?
yeah, I was fucking nervous about that because I'm with bosses. I'm not made at the time, and they're like, how you know Ronnie? Like I would have been like,
I
would have been
So you just played it off. So you're just like, yeah.
Yeah, and then his friend Frankie, another guy, he was with the Genovese. He said, "What the fuck are you doing going up to him? He's sitting with bosses. Everybody knows you're in the babanya business, and you're going up to him saying hello." And yeah, he abused them.
Billy Grasso.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's talk about. I don't know how much you know about that. I read a little bit about Eric Miller. Found dead on Leonard Street.
Right.
Is that a Billy Grasso type thing? Or?
Yeah, well, everyone knows the story with that. He put his hands on Billy Grasso, and like people don't realize what the Mafia was like. First of all, Billy Grasso was a ruthless, notorious gangster. And in the 80s, the Mafia was the most, I don't think there'll ever be an organization globally like that, that was that powerful in the United States, especially. Like they were powerful in the United States. They had 19 families across the United States. So, I mean, it was just, unbelievable.
And they ran like welding machines. And yeah.
And like I grew up, if you touched a Mafia guy, you're dead. We knew that growing up as kids. If you put your hands on a Mafia guy, you're dead.
Yeah.
Now in the 2000s, by Mafia guys getting beat up, shot, this, that, and the other. But when we were growing up, especially in the 80s, if you touched a made guy, you're dead. And that's what happened. Eric Miller, there was some fight at a restaurant Billy owned that he knocked him out, I guess.
Yeah.
And and they ended up finding him in the car dead.
And then the story goes too with
he was using like Italian racial slurs or something like that too.
Eric Miller was. Yes. Yeah, that's right.
He was using what?
He was using like Italian.
Yeah. He was using like slurs. Italian slurs.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't, but he didn't know who Billy was. He's an old guy, older guy, this, that, and the other. And he's a boxer. He shouldn't have, even so, being a boxer and you got an older guy,
ran his mouth. Let's circle back to you. So now, I mean, I guess we should get, I don't know how much time, I got to kind of think here from the time that you kind of take over. Now you're there, Felix is there, but from the time that you're running the Genovese family to really the time that you potentially find life in prison, you could all that. Like, what goes down?
Prison, bad shit. Like when I got made in 2003, everything bad happened after that. Murders, a ton of violence, multiple indictments I got.
Yeah.
And prison sentence I did. So getting made for me, and we said this before, I didn't need the Mafia. I was a millionaire prior to being a made guy.
Yeah.
I had a crew of guys around me that were, network of people that were my networking system.
Right.
I didn't need the Mafia. And so everything from 2003 of getting made, it was just like everything, I got made in August. Bruno got killed in November, but we killed my brother. I pled guilty to conspiracy to kill my friend growing up. I pled guilty to conspiracy, the Manzies during that time, right after that. Bruno gets killed. 2 days later, I get indicted for a RICO case. I get not house arrest, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. curfew. And then 2005, I get indicted again. 2005, I get indicted again. They take me off the streets.
That wraps up this episode of our mini series with Anthony Arillotta. The next episode will be publishing tomorrow, so make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.